Hello there and welcome. In this lesson, we're going to finally learn about methods. So I've been mentioning methods throughout the course, and by now you probably know what a method is, at least on the basic level. So we're going to understand everything about methods in this lesson. A method is just a reusable block of code that performs a specific task. Instead of writing the same code multiple times, we can create a method with this code and call it when we need to. Another reason that we want to use methods is to make the code more readable and cleaner. Imagine we had 1,000 lines of code over here without any methods. It would be hard to find something, and obviously this could result in slower development. It could result in a lot of bugs. So with methods, we can separate the code into these logical blocks of code and have code that is related in some way stored inside of these methods. So obviously there are more complex uses to methods, but we're going to first understand how a method is created and how to use it. So first of all, to create a method, we're going to provide the access modifier because we know that each type of data should have some kind of access modifier. So we can make it public. Of course, if we need to, we can make it private, but this will be public. Then we provide the return type, and we're going to talk about return types in a moment. At this point, it's just going to be void, and then we provide the name of the method. We should have some kind of indication, some kind of hint to what this method does. So if we see a method that is named, say, hello, we will know that the logic inside has something to do with saying hello. So the name should have some thought behind it. It should explain what is going on inside the method. Maybe we want a method that will calculate age. So maybe we want to have some kind of calculation to calculate the age. We should say calculate age. If it's the age of a person, then we should also say calculate age or calculate person age. Maybe we also have animals in our program, so we don't want to confuse. Obviously, we should avoid having a very long name for a method because later it can be annoying to have these long methods. But the important thing is that it should be descriptive. It should explain, even in a minimal way, what is this method all about? What is the responsibility of this method? Also notice that we are using a special format for the naming. And this is called Pascal case. Pascal case basically means that each word starts with a capital letter, and this basically separates all of these words. We cannot obviously have spaces. We should have all the words together, but so it will be easier for us to read it, we are adding these capital letters for each word. Otherwise, it would be very, very strange and very hard to understand. So in C#, in other languages, it can be different, but in C#, a method should start with a capital letter, and then each word should be with a capital letter. With variables, on the other hand, you can see that they all use camel case. And camel case basically means that the first word has a smaller, a lowercase, and all the other words will have a capital case. So you can see here, the first word has a lowercase and the next word has a capital letter. So this is for variables. For methods, we have the first word with a capital letter, and if we have more words, then each word has its own capital letter. For classes, it's basically the same as methods. We use Pascal case. So over here, each class is one word, but if we created a long class with a long name, each word should have a capital letter. So this is something you should know, and don't write methods like this, okay? It will be just weird. We have these conventions that all the developers use, and this is just easier for everyone. Now, we also see this error over here. And we cannot use public over here just because I already talked about this program class is basically a method. So we cannot use public inside of another method. We cannot create a method inside of a method. We can only call a method inside of a method. So the better example would be to just take this and add this into the class. And here we can actually do it because we basically create this method. But when we call the method, we just specify the name and these parentheses. We don't say public something. It's not going to allow us. We can go over here and we can create this car, although it doesn't make any sense to have this method inside of a car object, but let's just roll with this. My car, and we can use this calculate person age. So over here, we created this method. We provided the access modifier. Obviously, if it was private, we wouldn't be able to access it. Then we have the return type. If it doesn't return anything, it should be void. And then the name. And then inside, we're going to add the actual logic. And then to call the method, we can simply reference it like this. And if it's inside of the class, we can simply use it like this. Now, because it says calculate person age, we can do some logic that is related to the person age. Maybe we have this car owner age, and then we want to check if it's maybe we are going to change this to print person age, and then we can console write line, and we're going to print this. Obviously, it makes more sense to name it print owner age. But now that we changed the name here, if we go over here, notice that the name did not change. So be careful when you change names of methods and you already use them somewhere else. It's not going to change the name inside of the original method that you called. There is a way in some IDEs to right-click, and then you will find something named refactor. And if you use this refactor, you can basically rename the name here and it will rename it everywhere else. So in Visual Studio Code, I'm not sure how to do it. I know that in Unity, you simply right-click, refactor, and it's going to rename it here, but also in all the places you're calling it. But for now, we just need to find a new version, calculate print owner age. And this will basically print the age of the owner. So when we call the method, as we learned, it goes line by line. It created a new car object. It will continue. It will go here. It will print the owner age. And this will basically go into the method. So it will go into this method, into this block of code, and it will start executing the code inside. It can be a long method. So it will print this. And just notice that we have a very good name, print owner age, because this is exactly what happens inside of this method. Because later, when we have a very long program and we want to print the name, we're not going to remember all the methods. So we're just going to go into this object and look, okay, let's see what we have here. I don't want this. I don't want this. Oh yes, I want to print the owner age. And then we can use this method because we know what it does. So now let's talk about return types. Return types are very important with methods. We use them all of the time. It's basically a way to return a value from a method, because here we're just calling this method and it will execute this logic. But what if we want to do some kind of calculation and return the value, right? Because we can do this calculation. We can take the owner. Oh, I think the owner is private. Yes, we made the owner private. Let's make it public. So car owner age, and then we can say if it's bigger than 18, it should be bool. So if the age of the car owner is bigger than 18, then or equals, then this will be true, is adult, and we basically created this calculation. Now we can also do something else. We can have int owner age, because maybe we want to do something with the owner age over here. We don't want to use this. We want to actually create another variable, right? Maybe we want to do something with this new copy. So we can simply get the car owner age and store the value back into this. We can do the same thing with methods. So imagine you have a very long calculation. Maybe we also have some conditions and something. We don't want to have these long lines of calculations. Instead, we want to create methods. So for this, we can create a method inside of the car class that will be, let's just rename this one, is owner adult, or is owner an adult. And then we can do the same thing. We can take this entire thing, we can copy it, we can paste it inside, and at this point it's going to give us an error because we are not returning anything, right? This calculation should return us true or false. But at this point, the return type is void. It means that we are not returning anything. So we are going to basically return, using this return keyword, this entire value. And it will be true or false. But we also need to specify the return type. What kind of variable, what kind of data type we want to return. And in our case, it's a bool. We want to return true or false. So we're going to return this. Now this is problematic because we cannot just use the reference of the car inside of the car itself. We don't need to. We can simply delete this and use the car owner as it is and do all of this. And then if it's bigger than 18, it's going to return the value true or false. And over here, we can simply say is owner an adult, and call this method, and then it's going to take the value over here and it's going to return it. And by return, it means that the value of this will become the new value, true or false, and this will be stored inside is adult. And that's the point with return types. We can do some kind of calculation and return it. Obviously, we can do it in one line. We can even use a local variable, for example, bool is adult, and save all of this inside, and then simply return is adult. So if this is true, this will be true, and then we return true, and then over here we return true. Now, it doesn't only have to be bools, it can be anything. It can be, for example, a number, so int, and then maybe we do some kind of calculation, car owner age minus 1, and then we return this entire thing, and it will return an integer, and over here this will not be logical, right? So maybe we want to store it inside of this integer. And now the value that is calculated here will be returned and saved over here. We can also just print it. We don't have to store it. So this will print this over here. And this is relevant for all the other types. We can return a string. We can return even the owner. As I told you in the previous lesson, sometimes we want to make some of these fields private and only get them using getters and setters. So maybe we don't want to allow access to this owner. Maybe we want to make it private and then create this method, this getter, that will get the owner. Get car owner. And here we're simply going to return the car owner. Now, this should be an owner class return type because this is the type that we are returning. If we're going to say int, obviously it's not going to work. It's going to tell us cannot convert owner to int because we are returning an owner type. So this should be an owner. But then here, we changed this. Get car owner. This will be possible because we can print this. But if we want to use it, we need to store it into an owner object. So owner, car owner, and then we can get the car owner, store it here, and use it. We also don't have to store it inside the variable. We can just use it as it is. We can print it. We can even access other fields inside of this class. Has insurance, age, name, right? Because this owner is a class by itself, and here is the class. Name, age, has insurance, so we can access all of these things. Has insurance, and we can check, and this is a bool, right? So even though this is a class, it's an owner, this is a bool. So now we can only save it inside of a bool. Because the last thing that we actually return is this bool. If we want to return something else, maybe the name, then it's going to be a string. So we have to make it into a string. And then we can use it, we can print it, we can even change it. But remember, if you want to change the name of the owner, you should change the actual name. And this will change the name of the actual owner inside of the class. But if you're going to do this and then change the owner name, this will not change the name of the owner inside of the car class because we simply created a copy of this value. We took this value and we set the value into this new variable, and then we change the new variable and not the actual original name. So this will not change the car owner inside of the car. It will only change this new copy. So return types are very useful. We can get the value back, and this is one of the main uses of methods to create some kind of calculation. These calculations can be very, very long, and only at the end of the method we're going to return the final value. So these examples are very simple, but we can have very complicated calculations and algorithms and things like that. Now, another very important thing to understand about methods is that they have the option to receive parameters. And parameters is just a way to provide more data into the method. So maybe we have a method inside here that is public greet user. And we simply want to print something. Hello. Something. But we don't know who is the user yet when we create this method. We cannot just hard code something and say Mike because this may not be Mike. So how can we create a method if we don't have all the data yet, right? Maybe the data will only be available in runtime when we actually run the program. Maybe the user will input his name. So how can we create the contents of this method if we don't have all the data? To do this, we can basically create parameters and pass data into the method. So for example, here we want to have some kind of name that will be printed, hello name. And to create a parameter, we simply add it inside these parentheses and we provide the data type. So in our example, it's a string because it should be a name, and the name of the parameter, which is name or maybe username. And notice that I'm using camel case again. And then we're going to use this variable over here and print it. Now, obviously, we also need to have a return type, but in our case, it's going to be void because we're not returning anything. We're just getting this parameter from the outside, and then we're going to print this. So now, when we call this method, all we need to do is provide the username, and it's going to run this code. So over here, my car, greet user, and if I don't add anything inside, it's going to give me this error. There is no argument given for the parameter username. It means that we have to provide this parameter. And right now we're just going to say Mike. So we provided the string into the method. And now when it's going to run this method, it's going to say, hello, Mike. And this is something we can do with any kind of data type. It can be a string. Maybe we want to do some kind of calculation with numbers. Maybe it can even be a class. It can be anything that we want. It can be, let's say, a calculation. Oh, it should be a bool. So we want to check user age. We return a bool and we check if the age is bigger than 18. So we check user age. Maybe it doesn't really describe the method well because we're not really checking the age. We're checking if he's an adult. Check. Maybe is user an adult, or is user over 18. I don't really like to use numbers as names of the method. Is user adult. And then we provide the user age and it's going to do the calculation. Again, this is a very simple calculation. The calculations can be very, very long and take multiple lines, and eventually we're going to do something. Now again, we go over here, we call this method, let's see, is user adult, and we provided the parameter, so we can add the age of the user, maybe 40, and then it's going to get this parameter inside. This will be 40, this will be 40, and it's going to check if 40 is bigger than 18, and then it's going to return this bool, and it's going to return it here, and then we can do whatever we want with this bool. We can do something like if user is adult, then write some simple conditional logic. Of course, we can also add multiple parameters. We can add another one by using a comma and then specifying another data type. And this is useful if we want to do more and more calculations here. Maybe we also want to get the owner or something like that. Maybe we want to change the name or change the username. So maybe this will be some kind of setter, right? Maybe we created this car owner, but this car owner is still empty. It doesn't have any values. So we can maybe say set car owner. And then we can provide the owner age, owner name, And inside, we're not going to return anything, just going to be void, but we're going to set the car owner age to be the owner age that we provide, and the car owner name to be the owner name that we provide. So this is kind of a setter that we talked about in the previous lesson. So instead of having access to the car owner, we can simply go here, my car, set car owner, and then we can see over here that we need to provide the age and the name. So age should be an integer and the name should be a string. And now we have two parameters and they're going to be inserted into this method. And then it's going to set the owner name to be the owner name and the owner age will be the owner age. So then after this, if we go over here and we want to print my car owner. Oh, we don't have access to owner, right? Because we don't have a method. Let's create a small method. Public owner get owner return car owner. Get owner, and then of course it's a method, so we need to have these parentheses, and then name, and we're going to simply print the name, and we're also going to print the age. And now if we print this, these are the values that are going to be printed, because at this point, right, at line 6, this is already the new values. If we try to print this before we set these values, then we're going to get a null reference because our owner is still empty. Okay, so this way we can provide multiple variables, and obviously we can have more and more of these parameters. Just know that we don't want to have too many of these parameters, and if you find yourself needing to add more than, let's say, 3 or 4 parameters, it means that something is wrong with the method. Because remember, it only has responsibility over one thing. It should only do something like one calculation or one operation. And if you're providing a lot of different parameters, you're probably trying to do a lot of things in the same method. A better way will be to just say set car owner name and then only provide the name. And then this method will be very specific. It will be with only this responsibility in mind. Now, there's nothing wrong in doing more things, obviously, like changing the age and the name inside if it's all related in some way. But just know that if you're adding too many parameters, it means that you're probably doing something wrong. Now, what if, for example, you want to set this owner name, but you also want the option for the user to not provide any name? Then you can create a default parameter, and it basically means that we can add some kind of default value that will be used if we don't provide a parameter. For example, in our case, set car owner, we must provide this parameter. If we don't provide this parameter, it will just give us an error because we need to provide this parameter, right? But if we add a default value, then it will no longer require this. So with this default value, we basically mean that we can provide a name, but we can also not provide a name. And if we don't provide a name, this is the name that is going to be used. This is the default name that is going to be used. So if we call this method like this, this will be the value of owner name. If we provide a name, then it will override this, and Mike will be the actual name over here. And of course, we can use this for all the other parameters, but this is the point of the default parameter. The next thing that I want to talk about is method overloading. Method overloading is just the option to create multiple methods with the same name. Obviously, we always want to have specific names for our methods, and it sounds a bit weird to have methods with the same name, but it's actually possible if we want to do or create different versions of the same method. For example, if we want to create this method overloading, we should simply change the signature of the method. And a signature is basically the way the method looks like, the way the method is constructed. If we change the parameter, then the signature is different, and it basically allows us to use method overloading. So now we have two versions with the same name. One version is using a parameter. Another version is not using a parameter, but maybe has some kind of hard-coded value. We can create multiple versions of the same method with the same name as long as we change the signature of the method. Maybe we want to have one like this. Let's just remove all of them. Maybe we want to have something like this. Public void print message. And this will print some kind of default message. Now, we also want to create another version with this same name, but this time we're going to provide or ask for the message, and we're going to print the message. Another version will be print message, but with two different parameters. So this time we want to create some kind of loop. For int I equals 0, as long as I is smaller than times I plus plus, and then we're going to print the message. So if you need to have the same method but provide different options or create different versions, you can use method overloading. And now you may ask, well, how will it know which one to use? Well, it will use the one that you are using. For example, if I use this method and I don't provide anything inside, it will use this version. If I provide only one, let's say name or message, only one parameter, it's going to use this version because this version only requires one parameter of type string. If I provide also a number, an integer, then it's going to use this version, which basically takes this integer and prints this message this amount of times, right? We have this 4 here. It starts at 0. As long as I is smaller than times, print the message and increase I. So it's going to print it 3 different times. And if we go over here and we hover over this method, it also says plus 2 overloads. So we know that there are a few other options. You can see it over here. Now I don't remember which key I need to press to see all the different options, but you can just go to the class and see all the different options. And again, these are very simple examples for this and for all the rest of the things that we talked about, but methods can become more and more complicated, but I don't want to give you all of this information in this lesson. First of all, because it's a beginner's course and some of these things are more advanced. There is no reason for you to learn them. When you're going to get there, when you're going to build up your knowledge, then you can learn these things. What I taught you about methods is what you're going to use 99% of the time. Some things will fall into this 1%, but you can learn them when you actually meet them. So that's all for methods. Again, there are more advanced things that we don't want to bother with right now. And we're still going to use methods a lot during this course. We already used methods before. We always use methods, so you're going to understand how they work better and better. We're going to have more examples. And of course, you can also practice and create your own methods. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you're still not a subscriber. You can also leave a like. You can also become a member of the channel if you want to support me even more. It will give you access to our private Discord channel that basically allows you to interact with other members and with me. And usually I don't really have an option to answer all the different comments in YouTube. So in this Discord server, I will always answer you because it's a smaller population. And you can get other perks as well if you become a member. Again, it's really up to you if you want to give me this extra support. So I'll see you in the next lesson.